The world stands on the brink of a food crisis worse than any seen for at least 50 years. The UN has warned as it urged governments to act swiftly to avoid disaster. Better social protection for poor people are urgently needed as the looming recession following the coronavirus pandemic may put basic nutrition beyond their reach, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, said. Unless immediate action is taken, it is increasingly clear that there is an impending global food emergency that could have long-term impacts on hundreds of millions of children and adults, he said. We need to act now to avoid the worst impacts of our efforts to control the pandemic. About 50 million people risk falling into extreme poverty this year owing to the pandemic, but the long-term effects will be even worse, as poor nutrition in childhood causes lifelong suffering. Already, 1 in 5 children around the world are stunted in their growth by the age of 5, and millions more are likely to suffer the same fate if poverty rates soar. I'm just going to be very blunt with you. Things have already gotten quite crazy, but they are going to get even crazier. Global food supplies have already gotten tight, but they are going to get even tighter. When even the UN starts using the word biblical to describe the famine that the world is facing, that is a sign that the hour is very late. Thankfully, we are not facing famine in the short term here in the United States, but temporary shortages of certain items have already been popping up, and food prices are aggressively shooting higher. Maximo Toro, the chief economist of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, said the world's food systems were under threat as never before in recent times, as the pandemic and lockdowns hampered people's ability to harvest and buy and sell food. We need to be careful, he said. This is a very different food crisis than the ones we have seen crank up inflation, and that is going to have very serious implications during the times that are ahead. Right now, we have a window of opportunity before the next wave of trouble comes along. And I would greatly encourage you to use this window of opportunity to buy lots of food and store it someplace safe. Some people seem to think that if they have stored up a couple of months' worth of food that they will be just fine. Unfortunately, that is not the reality of what we are facing. The truth is that you should have enough food to feed every single person in your household for an extended period of time, and many of you will need much more than that. Even before the lockdowns, the global food system was failing in many areas, according to the UN. The report pointed to conflict, natural disasters, the climate crisis, and the arrival of pests and plant and animal plagues as existing problems. For instance, is facing the worst swarms of locusts for decades, while heavy rain is hampering relief efforts. Because when things get really crazy, many of the friends, neighbors, and extended family members that neglected to prepare will come knocking on your door asking for help. There are some people that would turn away those friends, neighbors, and extended family members, but I couldn't do that. Yes, they are at fault for refusing to get prepared, but I just couldn't turn them out into the street. If you also plan to assist those around you that are in need, that just makes your job even bigger. In the end, there is a limit to what any of us can do, and so we will do what we can with what we have, and we will leave the rest to God. I found it quite interesting that the New York Post is comparing what is happening now to the breadlines in the 1930s. This is the reality of what we are facing, people. So many people are already in desperate need, and this perfect storm is just getting started. In the Richmond, Virginia area, things are even worse. According to one recent report, vehicles have been lining up at one food bank as early as 6 hours before it opens. Can you imagine sitting in your vehicle for 6 hours waiting for a food bank to open? This is how desperate some people in America have already become. Sadly, even though we have already seen so many crazy things happen in 2020, most Americans are still not prepping. And so when things really start to unravel in a major way, most of them are going to be short on food and supplies very rapidly. So much more is coming, but most people don't want to hear that. Most Americans still want to believe that the future is going to be just wonderful, and so they see absolutely no need to prepare for the chaotic times that are approaching. But if I were you, I would begin to prepare for the inevitable food shortage that will be coming soon.